Moses disobeyed God. He heard God's instructions, but chose to act in anger rather than in obedience. As a consequence, Moses did not get to enjoy the promised land. However, God did allow Moses to stand on a mountain and look over into the land. There he died and was buried. Moses was a faithful man, but now God was going to choose another leader for Israel. God chose Joshua, a man who stood by Moses and obeyed God's instructions every time he was mentioned in the Bible. He was already serving God to the best of his ability when God chose him to lead. In the first part of Joshua chapter 1, God promises Joshua to be with him and never leave him as long as he's obedient and faithful to God's commands. 3 times during these instructions, God tells Joshua to be strong and courageous. Sometimes we need that reminder that God is with us and we don't need to fear. Joshua's first act as leader was to follow God's instructions. He immediately told his men to have the people prepare to cross the Jordan River into the land. The Jordan River was difficult to cross. It made it an easy protective barrier from enemies, so the families stayed in the camp by the river so that none of the enemies in the promised land could cross over and attack them while the army was gone. However, Joshua still needed to get his army across. God instructed him to have the priests bear the Ark of the Covenant to the middle of the river. Once they put their foot into the river, God stopped the water and, like the Red Sea, provided a dry path across. The Ark of the Covenant remained in the center of the river as a symbol of God's presence holding the water back while everyone else crossed to the other side. God told Joshua to have 1 man from every tribe take a stone from the bottom of the river and put it on the riverbank. That way, whenever they would look at that stack of stones, parents could tell their kids of the day God stopped the Jordan River so they could cross. The first enemy Joshua had to face was Jericho. This was a big city with a big wall all around it. The first thing Joshua did was send spies into the city. He wanted to know what he was facing. The spies were quickly discovered, but a kind woman hid them in her home and sent them safely out of the city and back to Joshua. For her kindness, God protected her from the coming battle. God told Joshua to take his army and walk silently around the city once a day for 7 days. In that time, maybe they could have made a battering ram or ladders or some other way to get around the walls. But God had a specific plan to show his power and glory to these people. On the 7th day, God told Joshua to walk around 7 times, and at the end, they would blow their horns and shout. When they did this, God brought the walls down to rubble and let them enter the city and conquer it. As promised, Rahab and her family were safe in their home until the battle was over, and then she and her family joined Joshua. When God does something for us, when we receive a blessing, we should remember it and praise God for it. Sometimes it can be hard to follow God's instructions, but remembering when He kept His promises, when He rewarded us and blessed us, helps us to remember that God is faithful, and He always makes a way for us to do His will. No task God gives us is too hard when He's by our side.